So we're just waiting for Tamsin, Dr. Tam. So welcome. Welcome, everyone. So we've got a few mics, which we'll be handing around, and also for Q&A with the audience later. So wonderful to see you all. Thank you so much for coming. It's a sweltering hot day, but fortunately we've got some air conditioning and fans up here, which is great. So yes, we've got an hour. I know we're starting a little bit late. I hope that's not going to be a problem for people. But yes, so welcome to the science panel on the new frontier of longevity, which is part, and the first session, of this amazing weekend that we pulled together with the House of KOKO on health, sound, and longevity. So it's an immersive weekend, and if you haven't signed up for sessions later on today and also tomorrow, have a look, and if you'd like to come back, do join in. I think there may be a couple spots left, but I think probably we're pretty much sold out for most things, but there is a waiting list. And of course, there's a Longevity Rave this evening, and I think we'll be giving wristbands to people who'd like to come to the rave tonight. So before you leave, if you want to come to the rave, make sure you get your wristband, because that has sold out quite significantly. So just a word before we kick off. So we've got 5 people sitting here on these chairs, all with incredible expertise and wisdom from different aspects of longevity. I'm Tina Woods, and I'll just say a few words about myself. I'll let everyone introduce themselves and where they're coming from on longevity. I see longevity as quite a diverse field, actually, and that's through some of the work that I do. I wear a few hats. I work at the International Institute of Longevity, where essentially we are trying to inject science-backed rigor and protocols and guidelines and industry standards in this space. There's a huge amount of activity with longevity clinics, spas, wellness retreats, et cetera, et cetera. I also involved in a very big scientific endeavor called the Human Exposome Project, as a follow-on to the Human Genome Project, which is all about understanding the wider external stresses and environmental threats on human health span, resilience, and flourishing. So I come at it from a very holistic perspective, and so we want to kind of open up this panel really to kind of look and sort of understand really what longevity is all about, what's fact, what's fiction, what are some of the myths that need to be busted that we're hearing about in the media, et cetera, et cetera. So I will go in turn, introduce my panelists, and then we'll have we've got lots of questions. Certainly I've got a few questions, but as we're going through the flow and as everyone is sort of sharing their perspectives, do think about the questions that you want to ask us at the end. So we'll make sure there's a really interactive conversation that takes place, because the whole point is about you being here and asking away all the questions that you might have about this new space. So I'll stop there. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Tam.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Dr. Tamsin Lewis, otherwise known as Dr. Tam. I'm a medical doctor trained at King's College in London and Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital. I was a former psychiatrist, so post-medicine I trained in psychiatry. I also intercalated a BSc in the biology of aging, and this is going back 22 years, where no one was interested in the biology of aging. And now it's become the sexiest topic in medicine. I subsequently was a GB triathlete, and through that time and experience, I learned a lot about performance medicine and health optimization. And arguably, we were the first biohackers without terming ourselves biohackers. We were self-experimenters. We were testing all the tools, the tactics, in order to enhance repair and recovery. Because if you enhance repair and recovery, you can adapt and strengthen. Essentially, that relates to longevity, as we'll come back to, because you, as some people say, you become the ultimate rejuvenation athlete. I set up a company called Longevity, I think about 12 years now, in order to help I wouldn't say average, but the more average, not athletic population become healthier and really get an insight into their biology. And now I work in between London and Ibiza, where I set up a clinic with 6 senses called Rosebar Longevity with Dr. Mark Hyman. I'm very passionate about encouraging this counterposition to biohacking called bioharmony, where we don't try to win at biology or hack at biology, but work with it. I also love to create experiences, retreats, etc., where people can have immersive experiences where they entrain their biology to really feel into the possibility of what Tina already taught us about human flourishing.
Thank you, Tam. I'm Stephanie Chen. I'm an investor and founder in the space of longevity, capital, and innovation. My co-founder is actually here for one of the ventures I'm working on. It's called Aeon Labs, Antonia. So together we're forming a scientific living lab in a future city in Switzerland. There we imagine a space where scientists can come together and live together as well in a way that's conducive to longevity. So not only are they studying, experimenting on what can shape the future of longevity and humanity, they're also living that themselves. That is something that we're really excited about, to continue to push scientific innovation to the next new frontier. And this is why we're setting this up in the future city in Switzerland. The real estate transaction is going through as we speak in Switzerland, so we're very excited for that and honored to be part of it. Another piece of it is called House of Aeon, for which I'm a co-founder for. So this is a real estate hospitality project at the intersection of longevity and hospitality, because somewhere between hotels and clinics, we believe there is a space to be filled. There's a gap where people can feel fully science-backed and clinically proven. Together. It's because we believe that science and research, when you have nailed what's happening, not even just right now, but with looking far into the future, using that insight and expertise, bridging that into the experience as a consumer that you would have, this is something unique to what we do. And most importantly, I will touch on this point, and a lot of us here can probably resonate, is capital. So my background is in investments. For 10 years, more than 10 years now, I was in the world of investments, working with family offices and institutions like Rockefeller, UBS, Man Group, and other family offices in the US and Switzerland. So capital remains to be still one of the most powerful tools that we love and hate. So one of my missions is really to channel capital where it matters. And longevity, the future of humanity, that's definitely an area where I feel that this is how I define impact investing, is investing with intention into spaces where it actually matters. So with that said, I'm advising on an investment platform, investing into the frontier technology space, as well as future of humanity as a broader thesis. Longevity is part of it. And we're looking at companies like cancer diagnostics and 3D DNA sequencing. These are some of the innovations that all of our panelists can speak to and advise on. This is what I love about also creating communities. And a topic that's missing the longevity fields is that we are creating communities like this, and we can help each other. We have doctors, scientists, technology experts, and together we can create a flourishing future for humanity. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph, Dr. Tam, and Tina. Hi, everyone. I'm Pete Ward. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Humanity. My background is I've been a tech entrepreneur for over 20 years. I'm a generalist, studied economics and finance, but became passionate about entrepreneurship since uni. And my first business was a travel social network, but having grown that to millions of users and sold that, my co-founder and I have basically reverse engineered behavior change and scaling consumer tech platforms to collectively over 1 billion users and 100 million plus in revenues and $1 billion exits. So mostly on my co-founder side, but collectively we built the similar sort of platforms. Having taken some time out, I think this space really called me. I lost my loved ones to early onset disease. My dad had a stroke in his early 60s. My mum had bipolar disorder ever since I was 4. And as an only child, I kind of had to navigate how to both support them and be health conscious in that. And I guess when my now co-founder, who worked for my previous startup for a while, sort of said to me, I think we can do something in this space, I knew that that was my calling. And so we've been on a mission since the beginning of this decade to give 1 billion years of health back to the world by the end of this decade. And that sort of big number and specific end result really forces us to think, okay, well, what do we need to do to get there? And so we started with a consumer health app, which you can all download, called Humanity. Got to 250,000 users and realized it's not moving fast enough. So we pivoted into the science and the B2B, and we now provide biological age as a service, a bit like Stripe for longevity. And the idea is to provide it to as many people as possible for free or near free, so that everybody can get this superpower of understanding how healthy they really are. And we're building a next generation AI large biological model that will predict future health outcomes, period. And again, the idea there is to license it to the entire health ecosystem to help them provide the use cases and the solutions to each and every one of us, whether it be a health system, a hospital group, a lab, or a physician, or a clinic, or a coach. It doesn't matter. We want to empower the entire ecosystem. And I take real issue with when I speak to, for example, investors who say longevity is an asset class for the rich. BS. Yes, there's of course incredible solutions for the rich and the wealthy and those who can afford it, and great. More of it, please. We need to push the envelope. That's great. But longevity should not be a scarce resource that is only for those who can afford it. It should be for every one of us. In fact, the people that need it the most are those who can't afford it. So I'm very passionate about population health impact and in call to arms of getting as many of us as possible to help solve what is essentially a societal, global impact health problem. And hopefully you'll join me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Mitchell. I'm the co-founder of Bramble Partners. Bramble has two parts. It's an investor in early stage businesses across the food system. And then I lead our advisory business. I was previously a partner at Boston Consulting Group, focused on the food system. So I had clients in the agriculture space through to consumer products, and advise governments and foundations on policy. The reason I'm here in terms of longevity is obviously what you put into your body makes a huge difference in terms of your health. And we have all been unwittingly part of a chemical experiment for the past 150 years as we use more and more agri-chemicals to grow our food and then to preserve our food and to give it color and flavor. And now we have four big macro trends that are kind of blowing this wide open. The first is that many people, maybe some of you, are taking GLP-1 drugs, appetite-suppressing drugs, effectively a hormone that mimics the feeling of being full. And so people are not only eating less, but they're actually switching what they're eating to having a more protein, fiber, and micronutrient-dense diet. The second is AI. AI, not just large language models, which are a lot of fun. You should take a picture of your food and ask it how you could be more healthy. It's not bad, actually, and more of that is coming. But for us, it's really a bit more of the biological models that you were just talking about. Will AI be to biology what calculus was to physics? It basically breaks it open and allows us to understand it in entirely new ways. The third is nutrition science. Just as a quick experiment, how many of you have read Ultra-Processed People? Okay, if you haven't read it, you should. But for those who have, it's quite incredible for a book on nutrition to be part of Waterstone's 3 for 2, right? So this is really broken into the mainstream. And the nutrition science is, I think, advancing very, very rapidly, again, because of AI. And the last is regulation. So the state is getting wise to this. I grew up in California. My father's British. I chose actually to come back to the UK to found this business with Henry Dimbleby, because we had a national food strategy, which he had written. You have the NHS, so you have patient records for 66 million people, one of the largest body of medical records for such a big population. You have huge venture capital, and London is an incredible test bed for consumer products. So I think the UK has a chance to actually lead the world in terms of how it transforms its food system. And all of us will get many of those billion years added to our lives if we're eating food that is much better and more diverse. And so look forward to contributing.
Thank you so much, Chris. So I think already we've seen a couple of points actually raised in some of the points just mentioned here on the panel around really what is longevity and where is this industry really heading. I think what we're seeing is this growing societal appreciation of how health is so precious, and that's why there's so much investment going into consumer health and wellness. I think we're seeing a bit of a hype cycle in terms of longevity as the hype word. And so one of my questions actually is to really look at really what does longevity mean? Because I think to Pete's point, it's not and should not be a luxury just for those who can afford it. I see for myself and all the work that I do, I see this as an enormous opportunity to bring all the science and cutting edge technology of longevity and aging research to be able to move upstream in prevention, which is where we absolutely must go in the westernized world. We've got a very broken healthcare model that is absolutely unsustainable. We've got an aging demographic, but chronically ill populations, eating too much junk food and not moving around enough. And actually, there are some very simple ways that we can have a major impact on our health, which isn't getting enough government attention or investor attention. So I think these are all the big themes that I think are really, really entering the debate. But let me just start off with that word, and longevity, because we actually had a little bit of a chat with Philip in the elevator coming up here, what he felt, what it meant to him. So I think it's a really good question, because I think it does mean different things to different people, and we are at risk of isolating it and putting it into a box that's only for the privileged few who can afford it, which is certainly not the intention, I think, for everyone here in this room. So what do we all mean by longevity? So Tam, what do you see it?
There's a few things here. Longevity is a side effect of the reduction of disease and dysfunction over time, essentially. But the common parlance for longevity has, and a lot of people come to me from America with a long list of, I want a longevity doctor in the UK, and they come and they go, I want peptides, I want exosomes, I want hormone replacement therapy with a heavy emphasis on testosterone, I want blood cleaning, plasmapheresis, I want cryopreservation potentially. So they come with this whole list of things, and I'm like, okay, most of those are non-regulated, and I would lose my license if I did them. There are increasingly ways around that, but I think there's a misnomer there on what longevity is. Oh, sorry, NAD drips as well, add on top of that. Always an NAD drip. Now it's NR drips, which is one step above, or hyperbaric oxygen, whilst on an NAD drip, whilst a red light probe is up your bum and maybe some ozone up your nose. So, you know, we are in this world of like crazy regeneration Olympics, and we laugh because some of us have tried all these things and we were like, whoa, it's all of these longevity interventions come into you. And then you forget about this container. We forget about this concept called homeostasis, which we've evolved to be very good at in the body, like regulating. And if you start stuffing all these peptides and exosomes and ozone drips and NR drips, your body gets this massive information. It goes, holy crap, what do I do now? Oh, I'm in a state of inflammation. So actually what you've done is massively dysregulated the system. This is why I'm so passionate about no-nonsense, looking at biodata, working with people one-on-one so that you can really get an insight into what's going on and create a feedback loop, a personable, or what we call hyper-personable medicine, where you create a feedback loop. One other thing I should say here, that in this whole longevity era, people come to me, they know I've trained in longevity, what that is, whatever that is, but it's essentially integrative medicine with a background in psychiatry, heavy focus on emotional health, that container of you and how you respond and react to your environment. How can you build resilience? So essentially what I do is create a risk profile, and I think many of the doctors in this space are doing this now. We look at you, we create a risk profile based on anything from body composition to genetics. Don't know if you saw in the press today, all babies are going to be genomed. Yeah, they announced that all the new babies are going to have their genomes read so that we can personalize interventions. So we're in this completely new era where we'll be able to track and intervene before disease expresses itself. And that's essentially what good preventative health and longevity doctors should be doing. They risk profile you. They look at little flags in your blood, your genes, your gut, and your exposome or your phenotype, what you look like, and then we help to divert that using personalized interventions. It might be supplements, it might be hormones, it might be gut modification, it might be NR drip, but it might not.
Thank you, Dr. Tam. And I think the main point is that it absolutely is individual to you. What is the best solution for yourself? Steph, what's your definition and how do you see it?
Sure. I agree with everything that Dr. Tam just said. It comes down to hyper-personalized healthcare. But let me just even take a step back. feel like we're here confusing a lot of terms. I would, at least from my personal understanding, there's wellness, there's biohacking, there's health and longevity. And some of us are using the terms interchangeably, and that's okay because they're all, once again, intertwined. The way that I would define longevity isn't necessarily what the word may seem. So longevity implies long, living a long life. That is really actually not the goal. We talk a lot about health span. A lot of us here are familiar with the term. So for how long can you live healthily with a functional body, move the way that you want to, and with your loved ones around you? So because of my work is so futuristic, so we're not even talking about individual levels, what longevity looks like, and that looks like, as, of course, for as healthy for as long as you can. We're talking about longevity on the level of a generation, civilization. So looking far into the future, how can we elevate an entire generation of people, countries, the entire planet to be able to achieve a higher health span and a thriving community with agriculture in mind, with education in mind, with exponential technologies in mind. So actually, this is why we've expanded the thesis to future of humanity. Everything, every sector, every industry needs to be mobilized. So this is how I would add on to what Dr. Tam is saying. On a personal level, definitely start with understanding yourself first, what it is that you need. Your body is so unique to your twin sister, to your parents, to the stranger sitting next to you. There is just no way that one protocol can cover generalized to longevity. And that probably will bring us to Pete's point.
Teed up so nicely, Steph and Tam. Yeah, again, agree with everything you guys have said. Yeah, I think that the most common delineation is health span, lifespan, and I think there's essentially two kind of bodies of longevity focus, both in terms of investment. I mean, there's obviously biotech and digital health as one way of breaking it out, but that kind of is consistent with what you can do now to increase health span based on current technologies, and of course being at the forefront of what the AI and data is telling us, and what's in the near future, and maybe not so near, but certainly what people are working towards in the next 10 years. And that's perhaps more on the lifespan side, because we're looking at how we can extend the capacity of living beyond 120 and moving that across. But I think there's so much we can do, and actually what we should be focusing so much of our time on, given there's such a sickness epidemic in our society, whether it be the obesity epidemic, whether it be the deficiencies in the agricultural nutritional system, and the lack of governments sort of shifting towards that we should and must do to help all of us and our loved ones stay healthy for longer. So I think if you focus on health span, lifespan will take care of itself. We want to push that curve out, and then that will give us escape velocity to hopefully bring us even more innovations as we start to unlock them with the biotech and the sort of AI and the science sphere. What I would say is that I just think that one of the things to sort of build on what Tam was saying as well is that people are always looking for those hacks or things that are going to give them some kind of edge. And I really sort of lean into what Chris is saying about the nutrition side, because when people say, for example, what supplements do I take or should you take, I'm like, well, I take 4 Brazil nuts, I take a handful of blueberries. I literally will tell them the raw foods or the whole foods that I'm having, because people spend an absolute fortune taking a selenium tablet or all these other things, and you can get it with fiber in your diet, which is significantly more better for you and is much, much cheaper and is available to everyone. So I really think a lot of it is about propagating the things that are available for a very affordable price. And obviously, the number one thing we can do to understand the hyper-personalized side of is it working for us is to monitor ourselves. And by monitoring ourselves, we have a feedback loop to say, well, okay, I did this intervention. Has it made me healthier or less healthier? And I think that's the biggest gap that we're trying to fill, which is giving people that concrete feedback loop to know whether if they do this thing in a few months' time or even immediately after or during, if you're wearing a CGM as a case in point, is it causing me a health benefit or health cost? And I think that's where we can spend a lot of our time making things better. CGM, yes, you're right, I should have explained, is a continuous glucose monitor, which is just an interesting way to get insight on when you, for example, have a certain type of food. And also, by the way, it's not as simple as, oh, I ate rice and I got an insulin spike, because it could be that you had a poor sleep and, you know, your body is already in a state of, you know, fight or flight, and you're reacting to a food that if you had a good night's sleep and you didn't eat since like 6 p.m. the previous evening, and you have it with some protein or something else, could be completely fine. So there's a lot of nuance to that, but nonetheless, it's a way to gain insight on how things affect you.
Final
Yeah,
comments?
I won't add too many more words to that, but I think it is very personal for me. It is very much. That's kind of where we've been. I think where we're going is, and then the quality of your life. You're trying to take away chocolate. You're trying to take away cake. Right? We can still do things that, done in the right amounts, can be part of a healthy lifestyle. But there has to be a high quality to that longevity. I don't want to live 120 years and have 40 of them be miserable. So I think the quality element is a really important part of what we, I think, should mean by longevity.
So really interesting point, Chris, the final point, because I think psychosocial stress, the ability to adapt to life's events, you know, our social sort of living conditions, all those sorts of things, these are very powerful and huge impacts on health, and reflect actually all the stuff that I do in this concept of the human exposome, which is all about understanding how we are all impacted actually at a fundamental biological level through these forces, some of which we cannot control. That's the other part of it. So it's not just about individual agency, because the other thing that came up quite strongly, I think, is this whole motivation element to all this. Obviously, with people who are biohacking going to clinics, they tend to be the ones with better information, they're more informed, they're also motivated, and they're also wanting value for their money that they're paying for these services. So, but oftentimes also, when you speak, and as I do with many clinics and many doctors like Dr. Tam, often, and you made this point very, very well, they come with very unrealistic expectations and they want that quick fix. That is the scourge of modern day life, is that convenience-led quick fix attitude. We always think we can get something quickly, and that's often not the case, especially when you're talking about your health. So I'm going to open up. I've got loads of other questions, but I'm just going to let the audience have a chance to ask some questions or maybe comment. I mean, is any of this discussion on what longevity is surprising? Do you have your own views? I mean, Phil, I know you had a very, very, very succinct definition. I don't know if you want to say to the audience what you felt it was.
I can't remember what it was. A long, healthy life, but healthy. That's the key.
I think the health bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And the brain health, as you probably just alluded to, I think this is one area in longevity that is underserved at the moment. It's one I'm very passionate about, having suffered a traumatic brain injury and subsequent inflammation, so saw that accelerated aging trajectory. So I think brain health is one, and we know there's strategic nutraceuticals that can support the brain health, omega-3, vitamin D, ginseng, bacopa, huperzine, all of these things with social, you know, the exposome you're talking about, all these environmental inputs, how they impact dynamically on a day-to-day, our biology, super important. Hormonal function, even in men, you know, your testosterone can drop off a cliff. There's far more to testosterone than just libido, sex drive. It's muscle mass, it's vascular health, that's your brain health indirectly as well. And light, circadian biology, getting natural light, getting nature, all of these feed into our human operating system.
So, and I'm going to do a bit of a plug for Pete's app. So I use the Humanity app, and it's a very incredible tool to actually monitor your health through the concept of biological age. And I don't know, probably most of you have heard of biological age, but maybe not. But I find it as a very interesting motivator. And what it does is it pulls together information from various sources, your wearables, your Oura Ring, etc. But also, what I find interesting, which is very unlike many of the other apps, is it does speak to this whole: have you been out in nature? Yeah. What's your mood today like? Have you been in touch with your friends? this is really important stuff, which really, really drives health. So I'm going to open any questions from the audience. Excellent. So I'll go here and then I'll go here.
Thank you. Thanks for all the panelists. It's super interesting topic for me, and I work in a private equity industry. My day-to-day is very stressful, so I work like 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours a day. I think you mentioned stress. For me, at least when I'm working, the stress hormone is spiking, and there is not much I can do about it. I'm not retiring in the next 5 years, so if I'm not changing my job, it will stay like this for the next, I don't know how many years it's going to be. But do you have any recommendations into how I can regulate it? How can I adapt to it? I was always in a survival mode when I'm at work.
So without changing your job, what's the solution? Exactly. So that's a difficult one, isn't it?
I can pick up on that one because I was in finance for 10 plus years, and I have been in, the last institutional position I had was at a hedge fund, and UK's largest hedge fund. So I completely resonate with what you're saying. The stress levels through the roof, and the burnout is real. So what did I do? Actually, interestingly, in desperate times comes creative solutions. And one of them that just happened to come to me, so let me answer your question first. How can you manage your stress levels given that there's not much you can change about your job? Number one is mindset. I would reframe the situation and say, hey, I'm so grateful and lucky that I have this position, and I'm a high-performing female in a world of men. And in this modern world where capital does drive a lot of the innovation, you have the strength and the influence to help make a positive impact. And then second, build small, tiny daily habits into your routine. And I'm telling you from a personal standpoint and from my personal experience, it really helps over time. So the first week, the first month, and then a year later, you see, oh, wow, my resilience, my emotional resilience, as Tam mentioned, has improved. And why is that? Because you have set up a morning routine that's conducive to helping you live through the rest of the day with productivity and positivity. So for example, I remember there were times I was nearly crying at my desk, and I had this emergency, solution is I would go into a conference room, close the door, put on a breathwork, and at the time it was, the first that I discovered was the Wim Hof method, and we can debate about what's right for our individuals, and I actually moved away from that since then, but at the time it really helped. It was just creating the space to breathe, to allow this, to give yourself the self-compassion that you needed. And then you walk out the conference room, you're fine. You're tackling the day. So yeah, I'm sure Tam also has.
Just a quick.
A lot of people coming to you with stress.
I won't go on too long, but there's a great book called The Upside of Stress, and as Steph said, reframing this situation. We are not meant to be highly regulated yogis all day, day in, out. We have cortisol and adrenal glands that are reactive to our environment for a reason, okay? You are going to be a highly successful individual if you reframe what that cortisol is doing. Take it from someone that also has had years of hypercortisolemia. So forget all the cortisol tests, but do use the Humanity app to track how the little things on a day-to-day are impacting you. Best one to offset the effect of cortisol in the body is movement. You have to get some natural light and move for 10 minutes in the morning. And don't look at your phone. Just do a digital 10 minutes, only 10 minutes, okay? And the next one is sweating. Go at the end of the day, sauna if you can, something like that. But yeah, hope that helps.
You can also do dancing. That's been a great stress relief for myself. I'm going to go to that question.
Yeah, this is not a question, more of a comment addition to Chris, I think you touched on. health span, lifespan, but joy span. That's my new favorite word, and I just wanted to bring that in here. How important is to just address longevity from that joy span perspective, rather than from fear. So how can we shift that mindset as well and enjoy what we do and not be in survival mode all the time?
Well, I don't want to glamorize poverty, but I've been living and working in Africa for the past 10 years, and I spend a lot of time with smallholder farmers who will have none of this. They'll have none of these things that we're talking about. And they can be really joyful. It's stressful as hell. It hasn't rained normally for 5 years in East Africa. And so the maize harvest isn't growing the way it should. And so people will be hungry. That's a fundamental, basic human existence stress. Office stress is very real as well. But I'm just saying, I really think that we have to recognize that humans can find joy in all kinds of situations. And that sometimes by reframing, and I liked your answer, reframing it to, all right, this is hard, could be harder, can help you just bring it down. I would also, the point I'm at 10 minutes, you know, I've dabbled in transcendental meditation, and I have to say, the defragmenting of the brain by not looking at your phone, and not doing anything, and just forcing yourself to be still, and what comes up in your brain as you cycle down is really powerful. And I do find that, you know, that's why the wisdom of the ages, right? The Stoics, they would sit and think about things. And we don't do that. I mean, we're all overstimulated all the time.
The other thing that you mentioned, Chris, I think going back to also your experience in Africa, it's this whole sense of community and support systems and having people around you who love and care for you, and that you're that even, you know, as an older person, your wisdom is venerated, accepted. It's all part of the whole cycle of life. Things like that. But I think your point about joy and happiness is a really, really important one. I think we all need to find joy and happiness in our lives, and it's going to be different for all of us, and that's part of our motivation to want to live, you know, a long life. So for me, a huge part of, I think, what's given me health and happiness, and, you know, as I'm getting older, is I discovered I absolutely love to dance. I absolutely love it. And I go to raves, and then that led me on to then learn how to DJ when I had serious foot surgery. I thought, how am I going to cope not being able to dance? And now we do these Longevity Raves, which is obviously happening tonight, and now I've learned how to DJ. But for me, it's about bringing people together, and that joy and the movement and the music, which of course is a huge theme of this whole weekend, is how these are so powerful, you know, ingredients for human joy, you know? So I think we all have a different formula for that, but I think it's a really important point.
And sorry, actually I do have a question, Pete, to you. And I hear what you're saying, that longevity for the privileged and rich is BS, but if you look at today, it's true, you know? So all the longevity space, you need money to be in it, and you need money to access this stuff now. So I wonder, how do you see that, when it's going to change? And we also know that poverty or not having access to it is actually contributing to disease.
Yeah.
So just give me some hope, please.
Well, yeah, to sort of anchor your point, and Tina will know this when she did the Health of the Nation report in the UK, the life expectancy between Blackpool and Berkshire is like 18 years. And it's not a genetic difference, it's a lifestyle and environmental exposomal difference, right? And so it is a socioeconomic and lifestyle and environmental problem. But the truth is that the solutions that are already available to all of us and are being propagated by many of us who are, you know, aware of them, are free. You know, the 90-10% rule of all the things that we can do are the things that you've heard, like sleep well, eat healthily, which is not necessarily the most expensive. Yes, organic's better than non-organic, but not that much of a difference that you have to buy organic. You know, you can wash your food, you know, thoroughly, and it's all still, you know, healthy for you. And of course, exercise and so on. What I would touch on though is, and this is something I'm very passionate about too, and it's just to build on what's been said by Chris and Tina, and of course everyone else, is it's not just physical and mental health. You know, so it's all good saying sleep well, you know, move more, get good nutrition, and recover from sleep. But there is the emotional and spiritual health, which are fundamental parts to it too. And I don't mean spiritual in the religious sense. I mean in the sense of consciousness, presence, acceptance, like having an appreciation that there's more to life than just our thoughts, actually. It's, we're part of a community. And I'm a massive community builder. And so I've built a tech founder community for 15 years, which has been a huge part of my life and has enriched my life beyond measure. And I feel very passionate that we need to bring more of us into community. So the one good thing about religious organizations is that church, for example, provides community. And the Harvard study, which is a well-known, very longitudinal study, shows that loneliness is the biggest killer. So I think we can do more to just be in community. If you look at the blue zones, a lot of people think it's the soil, but it's because they're all having dinners in the evenings with all their peers. And actually, there's a really interesting anecdote to the Africa point, which is, how there's the townships, and they actually did a study where they showed that the joy went down when they started to improve the housing in the townships, because when they had the corrugated, huts, people would not stay in the huts unless they had to sleep or do some basic needs. They would hang out, right, and be in community. Suddenly, you had these brick, one-bedroom sort of, rooms, and everyone was in their little rooms, and so everyone suddenly realizes, oh, we've kind of lost that community, right? So you talk about the rich. The rich are the ones who are building the bigger houses on the hill and are disconnecting from the rest of the world. So actually, there's an epidemic of social connection that we need to help the wealthy class.
But sorry, just a very concrete example. I went to another conference, biohacking conference, a genetic test with a hormone profile, 2,500 pounds. That's just now a very pragmatic example, and I think entrepreneurs in the space just needs to be, less greedy and more actually helping humanity, because I can see some of those providers are all in there for the money, and I think we just have to talk about this and address it.
Okay, I just want to give one example on that fundamental point. So again, I think that actually there's a much bigger revenue opportunity as a founder to build something that's population health impact. We're building models that are trained using data imputation and AI on real-world outcome data that we are licensing to lab groups for single digit to their customers, i.e. when you get a blood, will increase revenues because see a baseline and then want to do something and get anything. And that is something that we can provide through health systems free. And I think that's the sort of thing, and that's just one example, there's plenty more.
So I will just say one example to your point, which I think is the elephant in the room. I think social inequities, wider systemic inequities, are at the root cause of a lot of our poor health in the populations in the westernized world. So we can't ignore that fact. It is absolutely to do about that. So so a lot of my work is about how do you get the government policy making and also the investment models and new financial models to invest in actually health and addressing the social determinants of health, social housing where you're not going to die from mold, all those sorts of things, right? That absolutely is the heart of policy making, which the governments really need to take on board to really affect the masses. And that, to me, is longevity for the mainstream. So that's a huge, huge thing. Really difficult because we have a lot of vested interests all over the place. We've got the pharma companies that love chronic diseases. We've got food companies that love selling us junk food. And we've got now this problem. We've got GLP-1 inhibitors, which is now like the new quick fix. Oh yeah, you can eat what you want. We can fix you at the end. It's a disaster. We have to address the root causes and have the real solutions.
So what do you do to get behind that?
Well, the Human Exposome Project. The Human Exposome Project. It is absolutely about that and connecting human health with planetary health, because the root cause and solutions are all interconnected. Bad air, food systems, housing, it's all connected. So that's the really big thing, which, anyway, I can go on forever, which I will not, because I know there's some other questions, and so I'm going to go to some questions here. You
were first, you go ahead.
Hi. So I'm just going to add to the last question. I'm a public health professor, and actually I work exactly on this, how we shift population level lifestyle behaviors. And actually there's so much evidence that putting all the onus on the individual to make the change does not, except for the very motivated, for example, everyone in this room. And even though I think the government are kind of ticking the box saying that they are making changes. So there's a social prescribing program, for example. So GPs can prescribe exercise. They can actually give education, send people to nutritionists, but we don't see that happening within the NHS on a day-to-day basis. The government, it's great that the government are going to genotype every single baby that's born, but there's almost zero clinical utility from genotyping. And so who is that going to assist? Is it going to help the people in Blackpool who have 18 years lower life expectancy? No. So
this is fundamental, and you're
yeah.
absolutely right, but you're also addressing the point about understanding the intrinsic motivations and the environments in which people are making their decisions.
Yeah. So
if you live in an area where you're scared to send your kid into the playground,
yeah.
to get some fresh air, these all affect your health.
I think people feel left behind. They see this whole kind of longevity train moving further and further away from the basics of, allowing people to exercise and teaching them about nutrition. So actually the question was targeted to you. So as you work with Henry Dimbleby, who wrote the food strategy, is there a plan for the government to, in the food strategy itself, he mentioned that we don't have time to educate everyone. We actually have to nudge people towards healthier diets. For example, having
easy, cheap, convenient, all these sort of
so food reformulation, making greater access. So is there a plan to do more of this and implement some of this?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I can speak on behalf of the government, but
No.
we are quite close to them, and they are, I think, before the summer, which of course is always awkward in Whitehall language, it's probably in September. Yeah. They will be sharing it. The reality is that everybody is trapped in this junk food cycle. And 70% of our calories or our nutrition come from 12 animal and plant species. And we've just gotten the cost so low that unwinding the capital expenditure in those supply chains is incredibly difficult. And yes, you can do nudges, but fundamentally, price is the most powerful thing. And they've done tests on elasticity of what happens when you make vegetables much less expensive. There's some positive benefits, but for many people, their taste buds have been trained, their whole body, their metabolism has been trained to want high sugar and salt and fat foods. And so I absolutely believe that the government is committed to this, and I think some mandatory reporting on what's the proportion of high sugar, salt and fat foods that companies are selling can help. But it will take 40 years. And I do just want to be clear that nutrition education in schools doesn't happen. Nutrition education in NHS barely happens. Doctors aren't trained nearly enough on nutrition. And by the time somebody reaches the NHS, it's often too late. And so where is the Ministry of Prevention? Right?
So the regulation of foods, exactly as you say, used to be under DEFRA, which was a government body, which was scrapped and replaced with a voluntary body made up of the food industry. And they are the ones now regulating what we eat. And so, yeah.
I would also just add that bringing down the cost is key, as you said. And this is when public-private partnerships come in. For example, one of the solutions that we're actively working on, to your point, Lady in Pink, about genetic testing and the cost of that. So breakthrough technologies are going to be key to making these longevity solutions accessible and help them become healthcare solutions for everyone. So one of the solutions we're working on is by bringing down the cost by 100 times. So that will become a lot more accessible to have a full genome report. Instead of $3,000, it's going to be a lot less. And a lot more people can start there to understand their DNA, understand their history, what they're born with, and then they can work with that.
Thank you. I have a few points. There's a lot of interesting points that have been made, and I've wanted to say things along many steps, but while we're on this topic of kind of social inequity, it's very true. Like, I think social determinants of health dictate so much of outcomes, but I think your point around the example you gave around genetic testing and hormones, that's not what moves the needle. Like, yes, that's expensive, but for most people in this room or outside this room who are not invested in as much in their health, the most bang for your buck comes from doing the free stuff that we were talking about, right? And yes, that's hard too, because food is expensive, exercise spaces are not the same everywhere you go. Blackpool, we give an example there. And that's where you can lean into some of the systemic change. But I want to link it back into, I think, the point about stress there and Tam's point. I'm a physician. I work quite closely with Tam as well. I have a clinic of focused on longevity, but very much on health span. And it's about, I think, likewise, a lot of people come to see me, and stress is the biggest thing that is hard to change. You can do all the markers that cost a lot of money, and you can try and optimize all that with supplements and changes. But stress is such a big one because it's external to you. You don't have agency over it, right? And I think for me, like one strategy I often am using is that, or advising people as well, is that remembering that you can probably really count on one hand the things that are really important to you in your life. That's true for most people, I think. If you took away all the noise, that's by and large holds true. And it's that reframing. It's that understanding that, yes, this is stressful. We cannot rid ourselves of stressful stimuli, but how we internalize that matters, and how we frame that matters, and embracing that in a way that allows us to use the concept of, hormesis is a concept I talk about a lot, is that small doses of stress make us stronger. Obviously, there's you want to broaden out that curve so that you have a broader area where you can tolerate that stress, and that's how that lies in the optimization, what you're eating, how you're exercising, how you're sleeping. But in that stuff is hard because there's barriers to that. And I think what I always bring people back to is align yourself with your values. Like remember why would you want to be healthier? And that's what I start when I see clients, and I start off by saying, where do you want to be in 40 years? Yeah. It comes down to the intrinsic motivation. Exactly. And I think it's aligning yourself with those values, which is super important. Yeah.
Really important point. I know I've only got 2 minutes, so I'm going to go to Julian and Angela. I know Angela is on our panel in the afternoon about longevity mindset, so I may have to just go to Julian first. Julian.
Yeah, I'm ruthlessly obsessed with equity and access in this space, and I feel like we're all here. It's 10:30, and we have high agency to come to this event. The vast majority of the UK and the world don't have that high agency to change their habits. And I know there was a few nodding heads when we mentioned GLP-1 agonists, but they've had the largest impact on obesity levels in the US in history, right? And so what I want to bring to the table is, what does that magic pill look like? We're not going to be able to change human habits in the next couple of years miraculously. But what we could create is some magic pill, that maybe a joy pill, as we've mentioned, that gets people feeling more self-compassion, which is such psychedelics. Exactly, but like, what I'd love to ask.
Psychedelic medicine is a massive area of interest in the longevity investment industry.
Because I believe that's going to move the needle furthest, like self-compassion, looking at self, getting more present. So,
but I think the magic pill. I think you described the magic pill in a sense from what you were saying in terms of the values and the principles and what tickles, what ticks you, what motivates you. I mean, that's the pill. That is the pill that we're all trying to discover through our journey in life.
Aligning with your purpose, right? Like, I think purpose is so important. That concept of ikigai, if you follow the longevity spaces. When we lose our purpose, we lose where we're going, and that is a issue with that as well.
I mean,
So
often they say
on that, just one thing. A lot of people don't know what. If you ask them what their purpose and their values are, we're so busy being busy, we don't know what our values are anymore. So, doing some work around that to start with, and allowing yourself time for that.
But just as a general point, they often do talk about the magic pill being, if you had to choose one thing, a lot of the time they will say things like exercise. It's the fundamentals.
Yeah.
That's the point. It's going back to basics. It's the blue zones. It's Africa. It's like going back to the and community. It's community. It's about being cared for and loved, and the human connection.
Yeah. I think the issue with exercise, though, is, again, everyone's got a Whoop or an Aura here, and it tells you your VO2 max, and that tells you, oh, your biological age is going down. But actually, we forget about optimism. Optimists live 15% longer. Two of the largest.
It's about feeling good about your life.
Yeah, exactly. Community, all that stuff, which we kind of forget about.
So I think we've closed on a really, really good note, actually, because it does boil down to the fundamentals of what brings us a feeling of purpose, love. It's all those sort of things, isn't it? Which has come out time and time again. We're all attacking it from different perspectives, but actually, fundamentally, those are the core drivers. I'm going to leave it there. We're going to be hanging around, for more questions and discussion if you'd like. I know there's sort of lunch happening a bit later. But thank you so much to this wonderful panel of experts and for all of you and your great questions. And hopefully we'll see you later at the other sessions. And definitely come to the rave tonight. It's going to be amazing.
And some primal play. A good friend of mine, Boniface, is doing some primal play movement, light movement, but it's a lot of like catharsis, a bit of emotional release. So it's a bit of fun if you want to come and do that in about 20 minutes, I think.
Yes, so do stay and join us.
Where is it? It's in, where's?
I think it's on the second floor. Yes, I
Yes.
think so, yes. It's the
But
second
it's
floor.
before lunch. Yeah. Yeah, it's at 12.
It's in the piano room. The Sonic Apothecary is in the piano room from 12 till 7.
12 o'clock, 10
yes,
minutes.
12 o'clock.
Piano room, so downstairs. It's a lot of fun.